Kieran, it's a delight to be with you today to talk about the early days of Homestretch and how the whole organization came about. Can you describe the early days of Homestretch? What was happening at that time?
Yeah, Chris, at that time it was very similar, I think, to some of the calamities that we've gone through in the last 10 years, in the sense that the affordable housing was not sufficiently available. People ran into calamities related to their health care or their job situations. And of course, many of the families that we encounter in Homestretch have marital difficulties of one kind or another. And so all of those things can contribute to a family heading downward into homelessness. And at the time, there were organizations who would help the struggling families with small contributions to their utility bills or their rent. But those things could only be a marginal help and only for a short term. There really needed to be an organization that would rent facilities, rent apartments, houses for such families, help them over a much longer term, and help them to rehabilitate whatever situation they happen to be encountering. One of those organizations was the Falls Church Community Service Council. It's actually a more than 50-year-old organization. Its motto is "We Care," which I think summarizes the caring of the community that the faith groups and other groups that formed the Falls Church Community Service Council is definitely a caring community. The Falls Church group cooperated with several nearby groups from Vienna, McLean, and in the southern area, the Annandale area of Fairfax. And in 1990, we applied for a grant from the county, were successful, and engaged Nancy Taxon to help homeless families at that time.
You and Nancy and the other founders of Homestretch started with helping just one family, as I understand, and over time grew to help more families, and then more and more services were added over time. Can you describe that process?
Well, for the first couple of years, Nancy was working just part-time and out of her basement and garage. But over the course of the next 15 years, she took Homestretch from aiding just a few families so that it became a full-service transitional housing program. And at its peak, it served over 70 families annually with its own office building, dozens of dedicated housing units. And the units were scattered through various sites in Falls Church and in Fairfax. And as you know, that's a much more desirable way to deal with the integration of the families into a community rather than sort of segregating them into a small area of one portion of the community. So she developed a supportive network among religious groups, congregations like the Doolin Church, which has been fantastically supportive, the Falls Church, which gave us our first grant from the private sector, Holy Trinity Lutheran, Temple Road of Shalom, First Christian, and on. Businesses like Capital One, Don Byer Volvo, Reed Smith, law firm, and then various public agencies were helpful. They all combined their efforts, but Nancy was at the forefront. She was the one who persevered through so many crises, both organizational and with the individual families. And she had such terrific skill in judging what they needed and how to motivate them to get their processes moving in the right direction, often a very, very difficult thing to accomplish. And as she went along, she was able to hire some highly skilled staff, some of them still with Homestretch. At the deputy director, still with us, Brenda Wilkes, and the credit counselor, Heather Linsky. Those are still serving Homestretch today.
Yes, we're one of the few organizations that have staff that have lasted that long. We're very proud of that. Kieran, you've devoted your life to the welfare of children. You served on the school board for many, many years. Together with your wife, you fostered countless children. You even founded other nonprofit organizations, including one that was devoted to the mentoring of youth. Can you speak for a moment about the importance of children in your planning of Homestretch?
Well, I think all the people who've participated in supporting Homestretch, and certainly Nancy as our leader from many years ago, appreciated the fact that it's not just the head of household that we're attempting to support and rehabilitate, and that the whole family is involved in the process of moving from homelessness to a better life, and a life that can be one that is successful over the long term without forms of outside assistance. I think all of the people who've been contributors to Homestretch have appreciated the connection of the children and the head of household. It isn't just the head of household that we're attempting to rehabilitate, and that the children have their needs for education, for extracurricular activities like sports and music, and unless all of those things tie together, the family is not going to be fully successful over the long term, able to get back into the regular scheme of things without a lot of support from various agencies trying to make it an independent subsistence that they are able to sustain over the long term. And it isn't just one generation either that is a part of what we're attempting to accomplish. We're trying to break the cycle of homelessness so that those who are in the generation coming after that head of household will not experience homelessness themselves, but will see pathways to success for them and their subsequent families. And so that's a very important part of what Homestretch has always been part of its mission.
Kieran, you've been able to observe, even for the last 30 years, the work of Homestretch, and you've seen that we've been able to establish a record of client success, which is unprecedented. What do you think is the secret to this continued record of client success?
Well, the many successes that I think Homestretch has had have been a lot due to strong leadership from Nancy and from yourself. It's a rarity, I think, for an organization of 30 years to have had just 2 executive directors in that entire time. I also think we've had, as I said, earlier, the supportive community has been with us all throughout this time, and especially in the last couple of years, where some of the public types of granting have gone in a different direction, not going along with the kind of model that Homestretch has typically pursued. And yet Homestretch persisted with that model, recognizing its ability to have such success, and convincing enough people in the private sector that it's been able to sustain its practices, its successful practices throughout the last several years, and with a 95% or more of its budget coming from the private sector. The success certainly has to provide for some specific accomplishments that the family is expected to adhere to, specific standards, And we've even experienced situations where the family was falling behind seriously in not meeting the standards, and we've had to ask them to leave the program. Even in a few cases, having to go before a judge and removing them from a particular housing situation. But I think those have been extremely rare. Nancy and the staff and you and your staff have been very, very caring in how that's been carried out. And the vast majority of our clients, over 90%, do graduate, do have success after they graduate for several years that we've been able to track them. And I think that is an outstanding record of success, especially when other programs are lucky to achieve a 50% level of success in that way.
Now, Kieran, there's something I'd like to say that you don't know that I'm about to say, which is that you are actually quite a hero to everybody at Homestretch. We look up to you, and we look at the legacy of Homestretch as if we're carrying on the work of Kieran Sharpe. So we want you to know how much you mean to all of the staff and all the supporters of Homestretch. So we're proud of you and proud of the fact that you created this amazing organization, and it is an honor and a privilege for us to carry on that work.
Well, again, it's been a caring community throughout, and I'll just go back to Nancy for a minute. You know, when we hired Nancy, I was engaged full-time in a very different type of work. And while I had some ideas and was able to write some grant applications, it was Nancy doing the day-to-day effort, building the coalitions that we needed to support us, shepherding the families through all of their crises, and getting the agencies that at some points were supposed to be helpful, in some instances were counterproductive, or not very helpful. Nancy had to herd all those cats as well, yeah, on a daily basis, and she proved that it could be done, and your team has as well. It's just been a joy to see something that I know when we began, we expected to, that is that small group of faith-based folks who put the first grant together. We expected maybe to serve 10 families and to raise from the private sector maybe $100,000 if we were fortunate over the next few years to aid homeless families. Well, surprise, very pleasant surprise. Everyone came to our assistance, and we've been extremely successful over the 30-year period, helping clearly more than 1,000 families to get back into the regular housing market and to succeed there. We've had bipartisan support from Republicans and Democrats. Republicans like Tom Davis, Democrats Jerry Conley, Jim Scott, Marcus Simon. That kind of broad-based support is just well, it's very uncommon in these days. We even went through the split that the Falls Church experienced, a theological split, and came out at the other end with both of the congregations that emerged from that split being members of our program called Sacred Homes, and that too is something that we've proved that we can bridge many ideologies, many different kinds of people, diversity of people from all of the immigrant communities that we've been able to support. And so it's just been an extraordinary ride. I'm so thankful that it has proved to be a help to our community. both to the individual families and the overall community. When a family is homeless, it's not helping the businesses in the community. It's not paying taxes. When we put them back on a successful road, it becomes no longer a dependent family, but a contributing family.
Excellent. Kieran, is there any last thoughts you'd like to add?
Chris, I just think there's still things that we can accomplish ahead, that I think there's a scale at which we're currently operating that could be increased very substantially into other areas of Northern Virginia and into other states. I'll risk the saying that the District of Columbia perhaps should be a state, and that there are other organizations around the country that could benefit from the model that we've been able to develop at Homestretch. Many of the areas in the country are sort of at the level of organization that we were at in 1990, with just the local faith congregations being able to provide the $75 at a time, and not really making the successful rehabilitation of the families that is absolutely needed to make their success possible over the long term. And so Homestretch, I think, has a bigger stage on which it can operate successfully. I hope in the very near future that can begin to roll forward. And I look forward to working with you and the others. The present board members, I think, have a firm vision of how that can take place as well. And I look forward to helping make that possible.
Thank you, Kieran.